Warren here at the Kitchen Classroom, and today we're making a recipe that when I was a kid I simply did not like, and now I find absolutely delightful. This is my grandmother's recipe, or a very close version thereof. I'm pretty sure I'm using a little more cayenne pepper than she would. But it's a recipe, also a deep classic Southern recipe. It's called spoonbread. Now, if you aren't from the South, then spoonbread probably is not something that you have heard of. This is made with a few simple ingredients. We have our whole milk. We have our cornmeal, yellow or white, personal preference. I have found that most families only have one of the two, and whatever one they have is the one they use for everything. We are always a yellow cornmeal family in my experience, so that's what I have here. We have some sugar, some salt, our aforementioned cayenne pepper, and some nutmeg. I do implore you to buy whole nutmeg and not pre-ground nutmeg. It's not great. We have some egg yolks, and we have the egg whites. And we have our buttered baking dish. So we're gonna turn our pan on, sort of medium high. And we're gonna go ahead and add our milk in. And we're gonna bring the milk up to a little bit of a simmer. Now we want the milk to come up to temp before we add the cornmeal to it, but we can go ahead and add our sugar, our salt, cayenne pepper, and we're going to grate some nutmeg. Now, I think it can be said that it's hard to measure something you're grating really fine, so just, as the saying could go, measure it with your heart. Do what feels right. That seems like a goodly bit of nutmeg for me. Maybe we'll add a little more on top at the end when we finish the dish. Give that a little whisk. Everything mixed together. Now, while we wait for it to come up, we're gonna start with our egg whites. So egg whites in a clean bowl. You definitely gotta make sure when you're separating eggs that you don't get any yolk into the white, or your whites are never going to fluff up. But we did a pretty good job with that. So we got our little hand mixer here with the beaters on. You can do this in a stand mixer, or if you really want to, you can do it by hand in a whisk. But I find this, especially for something like 3-4 egg whites, is gonna do the best job. And start out on sort of slow, let it get going. And as they get going, we're just gonna slowly move the speed up. Part of the starting on low is just so we don't splash everything immediately out of the bowl and give it time to get going. See, it's already starting to get nice and frothy. Now we're on high. This will only take maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3. Turn that off. See, we got some nice frothy egg whites. We're gonna give them a little whip again right before we add them in. Get this, we give a little more heat to it. Now it's getting warm. We do want to see this come up to simmer or just near simmer. You're gonna see some little bubbles coming up. So it's gonna be another couple of minutes. All right, we're starting to get little bubbles coming up around the edges, few in the center. So we're up to a simmer nearly there, which is good enough for what we're doing today. So we're gonna give this a little whisk, and we're gonna, let me do this the other hand. We're gonna start whisking this, and we're gonna add in our cornmeal. Now we're gonna whisk this sort of slow and steady, or a little constant, somewhere in there while it comes up and starts thickening up. I want to make sure we break up all the little clumps of cornmeal and give it a minute or two to cook. turn the heat down a little while we give it another minute or so. Oh, that was off, but we're probably good. See how nice and thick this has gotten. Now we're going to come off our heat because we need to start cooling this down. And one of the ways we're going to cool this down is by adding our cold butter. This is 6 tablespoons of butter, and I like adding it in one big chunk because it's going to cool and melt a little slower, give us more time, do a better job cooling this mixture down than if it was in tablespoon or 2 tablespoon pats. The whisking is also going to help cooling it down, getting it exposed to the air in the cooler environment. It's also why we took it off the burner of the stove, so we don't have that residual heat keeping it warm. The reason we need to cool this down is because what we're making is spoon bread, not scrambled eggs, and we don't want our eggs to scramble with the heat, residual heat. So get this fully melted in. Our butter's fully melted in, and we've whisked it a good bit, so it should be nice and cool enough that we can go in with our egg yolks and whisk those in really quickly. So now we're going to add in our egg whites and give them one little final spin until they settled out a bit. Now we're going to give about half of them, give them a little fold in. We're not going to be worried about some French souffle. We're not that delicate here. This is just old Southern dish. Well, we're trying not to deflate them too much. So our mix is lightening up quite a bit. Let me get the rest of this in. And we do want to get this fully incorporated. I don't really want to see any flecks or specks of the egg white. I want a nice even look when it's baking. All right, so we got our buttered baking dish. As much of this out as we can. Don't want to waste any of the goodness. So we even it out a bit. Now we're ready to go in the oven. So oven's at 350 degrees. This is going to take about 40-45 minutes. Ready? Right in the center there. Set our timer. And we're good to go. So our spoon bread's done. We're going to take that out of the oven. Looking absolutely fantastic. Beautiful level of souffle on this. So I really couldn't be happier with how this turned out. You look, it's basically doubled in size in the souffle action there from the egg whites. Golden brown. I'm really excited to dig into this. So serve it. Now this is going to deflate over time, and that's fine. It's still going to be delicious. Serve, just going to take our little serving spoon and cut down into it. Make sure we get those edges where it's gonna have gotten a little bit of a crust to it. You can see the name Spoonbread here because there's no way you're getting this out with a knife. I like to serve it, just a little pat of butter and just a final additional little grate of nutmeg. That's the dish. If you wanted to go more savory, you could look at adding some chives or cheddar and even into the mix, but I like it really just how it is.